If you want to see what true, unfiltered gaming misery looks like, don't look at the competitive shooters. Don't look at the MOBA players screaming at their teammates. Look at the MMO community. Open YouTube on any given day and search the genre. The results look like a digital hospice ward. The death of the MMO. Why everything is slop. Is the genre finally dead? Go to the forums, the subreddits, the comment sections. A relentless, exhausting chorus of doom. We are a community perpetually starved, wandering through a drought, waiting for a savior that never arrives. The most anticipated games are routinely cancelled, or they launch, squeeze the player base for a month, and die. It has gotten so bad that the undisputed, uncontested king of the entire genre is still World of Warcraft, a game that is fundamentally 20 years old. 2 decades of technological advancement, and the best we have is the exact same game that brought the genre mainstream in 2004, just wearing different hats. We are playing in the graveyard of our own nostalgia. But why? A fighting game player takes a loss and queues up again. A single-player RPG fan finishes a game, says that was a masterpiece, and moves on. MMO players don't move on. We stay logged in, pacing around empty capital cities, complaining about the game we are currently paying $15 a month to play. To understand why MMO players are the most miserable gamers alive, you have to understand that the misery isn't an accident. It is the direct result of a twofold poison that only this genre is forced to swallow: artificial scarcity and capitalistic monetization. Now, you might be thinking, every game is a product of capitalism. EA, Ubisoft, Activision, they all want your money. Why are MMOs uniquely destroyed by it? The answer requires an elegant distinction. When you buy a single-player game, you are buying a fantasy, an isolated experience, a story where you are the hero, the rules bend in your favor, and eventually the credits roll. A Souls-like drops you into a fantasy of struggle and mastery. A shooter gives you a fantasy of reflexes and dominance. A single-player RPG hands you a fantasy of heroism and consequence. The world is imagined. The rules are invented. The power is yours alone. You play, you win. You put the controller down and walk back into your life. The fantasy was real while it lasted. An MMO sells something categorically different: a virtual society. And to build a virtual society that people actually care about, you need one thing above everything else: scarcity. Not as a design choice, as a biological requirement. If everyone can have everything instantly, every mount, every piece of gear, every rare title, then nothing means anything. Prestige evaporates. Effort becomes invisible. Status collapses. The world loses its aspirational architecture and becomes an empty theme park where nothing is worth wanting because everything is already yours. So developers engineer friction. Drop rates calibrated to frustrate. Gear locked behind hundreds of failed attempts. Mounts so rare that simply riding one into a capital city turns heads. Not because the developers are sadists, but because human psychology only assigns value to what is genuinely difficult to obtain. Scarcity isn't a corruption of the MMO fantasy. It is load-bearing. Remove it, and the world falls down. But the moment you introduce scarcity into a world full of humans, something inevitable happens. Hierarchy emerges. Haves and have-nots. The powerful and the powerless. A grinding middle that works, progresses, and never quite arrives. Here is where the trap snaps shut. The moment you simulate a society inside a capitalist framework, you inevitably recreate the exact same crushing hierarchies of the real world. We logged in to escape the middle-class despair of reality. The feeling of working, grinding, and never truly arriving. But a society requires a middle class. It requires a grinding majority that looks up at the 1% with envy. We went looking for a different world. We built a mirror instead. And this is the psychological engine running underneath all of it. MMO desire is never purely about possession. Rarity is social legibility. Proof that the world noticed you, that your effort registered, that you exist at a level the hierarchy acknowledges. Other genres let you fantasize about power in private. MMOs make you perform significance in public. The grind is not just about getting the item, it's about being seen holding it. The cruelty of this system evolved in two distinct phases. MMO 1.0 was labor extraction. Back in the early days of World of Warcraft, the currency was time. The real-world rich kid had no advantage over the broke college student. If you had nothing but free time, your real-world disadvantage became your virtual weapon. Take Asmongold as the perfect case study. Young, broke, staring down a jobless existence. He thought Azeroth was the great equalizer. What he didn't understand until much later was that his advantage had nothing to do with skill. His advantage was poverty. He had nothing but time. The people he was beating had jobs, mortgages, obligations. He mistook his unemployed desperation for divine merit. But within the airtight logic of World of Warcraft's economy, his desperation was his merit. Your gear score, your gladiator title, your absurdly rare mounts, the gilded deeds to a digital aristocracy. When you stood idle in a capital city, the game functioned as a stage. People inspected you. They recognized exactly what your position cost in human labor. The respect was real, conferred publicly by thousands of envious eyes. For a young man invisible to every hierarchy the physical world recognized, this was the first social system where his exact circumstances made him a god rather than a ghost. It was brutal, life-consuming. It extracted your youth and your hours. But it felt like a pure meritocracy. And for a brief window, the inversion was real. The have-nots of society had found a system that rewarded their exact disadvantage. It felt like justice. MMO 2.0 is capital extraction. Eventually, the industry got smarter. They looked at that engineered, load-bearing gap between the haves and the have-nots and monetized it directly. Subscriptions on top of box prices, battle passes, microtransactions. Cosmetics priced at a dinner for two. The dominant currency shifted from time to real-world capital. The illusion of pure meritocracy collapsed. The billionaires and the broke kids walked straight through the login screen and set up the exact same economic hierarchy on the other side. Where winds meet is the most sophisticated expression of this evolution. Out in the wilderness, every player gets a private fantasy. Gorgeous, immersive, genuinely free. Your bank account invisible. Your cosmetics irrelevant. You are the uncontested protagonist of your own wuxia epic. The economy class cabin with the windows mercifully blacked out. Then you enter the hub cities, Monaco, Singapore, the specific zip code that capital buys its way into while everyone else watches through the fence. Outfits that cost more than a car payment. Mounts that communicate one thing and one thing only, that the person riding them has the kind of disposable income that doesn't need to be disposed of carefully. The whales get their stage. Ordinary players get immersion. Spenders get spectacle. Meaning itself gets tiered. And here is the trap that closes on every non-spending player. The wilderness is peaceful, but lonely. You are the protagonist of a story nobody else is watching. So, eventually, the hunger builds. Not for gear, not for power, but for connection, for recognition, for the feeling of existing inside a world that notices you. And the only place that world exists is the hub city. So they go back. Last season's free armor, standing next to a celestial dragon set that retails for a weekend in Vegas. The comparison is instantaneous and total. Then they retreat, back to the wilderness, back to the private fantasy where the hierarchy can't reach them, until the hunger builds again and the cycle repeats. The wilderness is the waiting room, the hub city is the bill, and the loneliness is what keeps sending you back to pay it. And if you're going to live inside a rigged digital economy, you might as well tilt the math slightly in your favor. Which brings us to today's sponsor, Enjoy GM. If you're looking to top up Echo Jade for where winds meet, Enjoy GM operates across regional markets and passes those geographic savings directly to you, meaning better rates than standard top-up prices. Head to the site, enter your UID, pick your amount, and pay. No account login required, nothing sensitive shared, 24/7 human support available. Link in the description. Thanks to Enjoy GM for supporting the channel. So we return to the forums, the YouTube essays, the endless complaints, the drought, the slop. The fact that the greatest game the genre ever produced is still a 20-year-old game with a different coat of paint. We are miserable because we are trapped in the middle class of two different worlds simultaneously. Working, progressing, never arriving, at our real desks and at our virtual ones. The exit sign was always an entrance. Log off and the real world is waiting. Log in and it's already there. But zoom out far enough and there is a dark, almost brilliant irony buried inside all of this. For decades, developers chased the ultimate dream, to build a perfectly simulated, breathing, living virtual world, a true digital society. And they did it. They succeeded so completely, so flawlessly, that the virtual society they built generates the exact same existential dread, class resentment, and capitalist exhaustion as the real one. MMO players are the most miserable gamers alive because they are the only gamers who asked for a new world and got a perfect copy of the old one instead. We asked for a simulation of human society. They gave us one. Task failed successfully.